familiar tools, like for example my vector tool. I'm just going to go ahead and draw out a rectangle. Now one of the things that you'll notice is you don't see a lot of palettes or panels, because in the Rome project everything is intuitive. So when I've got an object selected, you'll notice that Rome intelligently decides what can I do with that particular object. So maybe it is something like applying a color. I'm not even clicking, I'm just mousing over to go ahead and select my color. Of course, this is a vector object, as I said, so just to prove that it is a vector object, I'll choose my path selection tool and maybe draw in a new path and maybe even take my tangents and grab those and maybe even break them apart here for you, so you can see these are in fact real vector objects. Of course, what would any animation be without some text? So I'm going to draw out a text box here. I'm going to paste in some text, and of course immediately you can see my text box has a scroll bar. I can scroll through that, but maybe I don't want my user to scroll. Maybe I would rather just draw out another text box. No, I'll go back and select my selection tool and say I would like to take this text box and link it over to this one. And so now my text has flown together. Woo! Pretty cool, all right? Now, of course, I don't want this just sitting here on the stage, so instead I'm just going to select all of these objects and say, you know what, I'd like to do a little bit of animation. So what you might have noticed is down here along the bottom of my timeline, I've actually got, or my screen, I've actually got an animation timeline. So we'll go ahead and say, I'm ready to do an animation. I'm just going to move this object off screen just a little bit. And then I'm going to move and say right about here, or something like that, we're going to have slid this thing back up. And you can see that I've now got an animation going on. Now, of course, it's not just about bringing in artwork or drawing artwork. I can also import artwork that I've been working on. So I've actually got a PSD, a native Photoshop file, untouched, right out of Photoshop, and I'm going to import that right here into my application. You see here it is, this is it. I'm going to go ahead and move it here to the back just a little bit. Arrange that, push it all the way to the back so it's going to be behind my animation. And to prove this is a Photoshop document, I'm going to double click on it, and you can see here are my Photoshop layers that I brought in, toggle them on and off. Maybe even, you know what? Photoshop is all the cool effects you can do, right? So I'm going to add a filter. In fact, I've got pixel bender filters right here. I'm going to go ahead and just posterize some edges just like that on my Photoshop document and bop back out. Now, the last thing that I want to do is add in a new transition or new state to my application. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in a new page, if you will. Now, I'm going to go grab some other content. By the way, I mentioned that I can import Photoshop documents. Well, I can do a little bit more than that, too. I can actually go out and search for stuff on the web. For example, I'm going to go out and search for some Rock Shack, that is if I can actually spell, some Rock Shack photographs, and you'll notice that the Rome project is actually hooking up to all of my search engines here and looking through all the various search engines so I can go through and find some appropriate graphic. Hey, there's a picture of me. Imagine that. Out there on the web, I'm going to grab that, and of course this is a real image. To prove it's a real bitmap image, I'll double click on it, and guess what? Ever seen the magic wand before? Well, there we go. In fact, let me just change a little bit of the tolerance on that thing so that I can select just a smaller area. And then as I select that, I'll delete it so you can actually see through this. This is, in fact, a transparent image that I've now got here. Cool? It's all about video, right? You see a video everywhere, so I've got one last thing I got to do. I got to grab a video. Now, we've also got the Rome project hooked up to something we call the Content Exchange, where we can upload our favorite stuff. And so I've actually uploaded, or had one of my colleagues upload a video, a regular old FLV flash video file, and I'm actually going to import that and drop that here on the stage. Now you can see this is in fact a video file as I scrub through it. Now the last thing I'm going to do is I need to wire up the transition, so I'm just going to take a regular old shape. I'm going to say, you know what, when we click on the entertainment button here, I'm going to take this entertainment button and I'm going to convert it into a hotspot. When it's a hotspot, it means that I can attach events, like a click event. So I'm going to add an action to go to my next slide. the Rome says, okay, which slide? I said, well, that slide I just added right there. So now I'm ready to test this thing to see what I've got. And here you see my animation, and I'm going to scroll over there, and there's my video playing, just like that. Cool? We're looking at a Swift export, but of course, not only can I output the Swift, I can output this as a JPEG, a PNG, a Swift, as I said, SVG, even output it as a PDF, or upload it directly to Facebook or to my favorite website through my FTP information. And like I said, this is an Air application, which means it's also running in the browser exactly the same way as you just saw it running on my desktop. And that, my friends, is Rome.
So Greg,